The latest revelations on the young and the restless suggest that Cain Ashby has slipped into a state where morality becomes negotiable the moment his family's freedom is placed on the scale. And in his mind the scale is already tipped by Victor Newman's unseen hand. Cain is not simply worried. He is consumed by a conviction that Lily Winters and the twins he once helped raise no longer children, but grown people with their own will and pride have been reduced to pawns in a hostage game that Victor is playing off the books. It is a terrifying belief because it explains too much and excuses even more. Cain has always understood that Victor's power does not require a locked room and a gun. Victor can cage someone with leverage, paperwork, a threat to reputation, a sudden financial freeze, a strategically placed accident, or the kind of psychological pressure that makes a person think they chose captivity. That is the horror of Victor's control. It can look like normal life from the outside. Cain's insistence that Lily and the twins are hostages is not built on one dramatic clue but on a pattern of vanishing options, closed doors, and that unmistakable Newman sensation that a future has been edited without permission. He hears it in the sudden silence when he calls. He sees it in how people avoid specifics. He feels it in the way information arrives late or in fragments, as if someone is allowing him only what they want him to chase. In Cain's head, Victor is not merely obstructing, he is orchestrating. And once Cain believes that, there is no safe middle ground left. He becomes a man who will do anything, not because he is impulsive, but because desperation gives him a terrible clarity. The problem is that clarity can be wrong, and even when it's right, it can still destroy everything it tries to save. Phyllis Summers is the first person to put a hard edge against Cain's obsession, and that resistance becomes the spark that ignites the real crisis. Phyllis does not operate from the same emotional architecture as Cain. She is familiar with Victor's methods, yes, but she refuses to let fear become a leash. She challenges Cain's hostage narrative because she recognizes something else lurking under it, a slippery justification that could be used to bulldoze anyone who stands in Cain's way, including her. Where Cain sees urgency, Phyllis sees a trap, one designed not merely to threaten Lily, but to force Cain into becoming Victor's instrument. Victor's demand is chilling in its simplicity. Cain must find a way to convince Phyllis to relinquish control over Newman Enterprises. It is a demand that tries to disguise itself as a solution, as if transferring power is the only price to pay for freedom, as if freedom can be negotiated like shares. Cain initially calls it impossible, and for a moment his moral compass flashes alive. He knows Phyllis does not surrender, not to Victor and not to anyone using emotional blackmail. He also knows that even if she did, Victor would not stop there. Victor never does, yet time is Victor's favorite weapon. Cain is given days to think, days in which fear ferments into certainty, days in which he imagines Lily and the twins trapped in a beautiful cage, smiling on command, forced to play normal while invisible walls tighten. Those days are not neutral. They are engineered to break him down until the impossible begins to look like the only remaining move. The turning point arrives through a confrontation that does not feel like a conversation so much as a collision with a man who reflects back everything Cain hates about himself. Devin Winters is not merely an ex-brother-in-law. He is a living reminder of the Winters family's strength, the family Cain once tried to join and then repeatedly failed to protect. Devin's presence forces Cain to answer a question Cain has been dodging. Is he acting out of love, or out of the old hunger to prove he belongs? To prove he can rescue the Winters name the way he once promised. Devin's skepticism is merciless because it is rooted in experience. Devin has watched people claim they are saving Lily while actually saving themselves. He has watched men turn Lily into a prize in a power war. He has watched Victor Newman crush the well-intentioned simply because they were predictable. So when Cain insists Lily and the twins are hostages, Devin does not offer sympathy. He demands evidence and warns Cain about the danger of letting Victor write the script. Their confrontation becomes a storm of accusations and buried guilt. Cain accusing Devin of underestimating Victor, Devin accusing Cain of being manipulated. Cain accusing Devin of standing on the sidelines, Devin accusing Cain of chasing drama instead of truth. It is in that volatile exchange that Cain's thinking focuses, but focus does not mean calm, it means the narrowing of options until one dark corridor feels inevitable. Devon's refusal to validate Kane's fear pushes Kane closer to Victor's terms, not because Kane trusts Victor, but because Kane begins to believe no one else will act fast enough. Devon wants strategy, Kane wants immediate liberation, and that is exactly how Victor wins, by exploiting the gap between caution and terror. Then Phyllis arrives, and her entrance is not soft. She appears on an old, creaking train car that has been repurposed into Kane's living and working space, an environment so bizarre it almost feels like a dare. The train is not merely a quirky setting, it is a psychological statement. A train is motion without movement, travel without destination, the illusion of forward progress while remaining trapped on a track. Kane living in a simulated train car suggests a man who wants to feel like he's escaping, like he's constantly en route to something better, while in reality he's parked in the wreckage of his own decisions. The space is fully functional, yet it is staged, almost theatrical, worn with humming lights, the occasional groan of metal as if the car remembers what it used to be. The place is full of soap, as if the set itself has soaked up the melodrama of desperation and reinvention. And it invites the question that hangs over the scene like smoke: who lives on a simulated train car? Someone who cannot stand still in a normal life. Someone who wants the romance of exile without admitting it is exile. Someone who is hiding in plain sight, turning his life into a metaphor so he does not have to name the reality. Kane is a man who has been stripped down, not just financially, but psychologically. And he is rebuilding himself out of scraps, props, and stubbornness. He lives there because houses feel like permanence, and he no longer trusts permanence. He lives there because hotels feel like shame, and he refuses shame. He lives there because a train car feels like a temporary choice, and temporary choices are easier to justify when you believe the world is about to collapse anyway. Phyllis, stepping onto that train, understands instantly that Kane has crossed into a new version of himself. She can smell it: panic disguised as purpose, moral erosion disguised as sacrifice. She does not ridicule the train, but she doesn't romanticize it either. She reads it the way she reads people, as a signal of instability, a sign that Kane is operating outside the usual guardrails. That is why Victor's demand about Newman Enterprises becomes more dangerous in her eyes. Phyllis knows what it means to be asked to let go of control. In her world, control is not vanity, it is survival. It is the only thing that prevents Victor from writing her ending. So when Kane approaches her with the idea, whether gently at first or with growing insistence, that she should consider stepping back, she hears the real message beneath it. Victor wants her disarmed. Victor wants her compliant. Victor wants her to hand over the one position that gives her leverage, and Phyllis will not do it. Not because she lacks empathy for Lily, but because she understands that surrendering to Victor never saves anyone in the long term. It simply feeds him. Phyllis challenges Kane to prove what he believes. She demands details, names, moments, anything concrete. Kane, pressed against his own fear, responds not with proof but with certainty, and certainty without proof is the most dangerous currency in Genoa City. Their disagreement becomes more than a strategic conflict, it becomes a clash of identities. Phyllis is a woman who has survived Victor by refusing to submit. Kane is a man who thinks submission may be the only way to buy time. Between them sits the question of Lily's freedom, heavy enough to crush reason. But the train car is not just a stage for their argument, it is a clue, and it leads to the deeper question that Devon's confrontation exposed, and that Victor's demand implies. Before anyone can answer who lives on a simulated train car, they must ask another: how is Kane funding anything at all since Victor dissolved Arabesque? That question is not merely about money, it is about what Kane has become since the rug was pulled out from under him. Arabesque's dissolution did not only strip Kane of a public identity, it severed his legitimate pipeline to resources, influence, and credibility. In Genoa City, people notice when someone loses an empire, and they notice even more when that person continues operating as if nothing changed. Kane's train life is a mask of modesty, but his ability to mobilize, to investigate, to keep tabs, to pay for private support, to maintain a base of operations, those things cost money. If Victor wants Kane as his instrument, Victor also likely wants Kane dependent, so Kane's funding becomes a mystery, and mysteries in this town are rarely clean. Phyllis begins to suspect that Kane has found alternative channels, quiet investors, off-the-record deals, favors cashed in. A network of old contacts from the years when Kane's name still opened doors. Perhaps he has been trading information the way other men trade stock, selling intel to people hungry to outmaneuver the Newmans and the Abbotts. Perhaps he has been running small operations that look harmless from the outside, consulting, logistics, security, while actually functioning as a shell structure for more aggressive moves. The train car, after all, is a perfect symbol for a shell, functional, mobile in theory, self-contained, and easy to move if someone comes looking. Las Vegas suddenly begins to feel like more than a parallel storyline. It starts to feel connected. Adam's spider history in Vegas echoes the idea of shadow identities and off-grid networks, and Kane's ability to keep operating after Arabesque's dissolution suggests he, too, has drifted toward the margins, toward the kinds of financial improvisation that flourish in places like Vegas. It is easy to imagine that Kane, cornered by Victor's pressure and desperate to free Lily, has dipped into a world of informal funding. Not necessarily criminal in the obvious sense, but gray partnerships with people who don't ask questions, backers who want a future favor. Money that moves through channels that never touch a Newman ledger. Kane may justify it as temporary, as necessary, as the only way to fight a man like Victor, but every gray step becomes another chain. Victor does not need to hold Lily in a literal room if he can hold Kane with knowledge of what Kane has done to keep the lights on. This is the true hostage situation that Devon senses and that Phyllis fears. Kane may believe Lily is the hostage, but Kane himself may already be captured by the compromises he has made. As the argument on the train escalates, Phyllis begins to see the shape of Victor's trap more clearly. Victor's demand is not designed to be achievable. It is designed to force Kane into a collision with Phyllis that will destabilize her position and make her look like the villain who refused to save Lily. Victor wants public narrative as much as private control. If Phyllis refuses, she can be painted as selfish, power-hungry, indifferent to Lily's suffering. If Phyllis agrees, she hands Victor the keys. Either outcome benefits Victor. That is why Phyllis digs in, refusing to be emotionally blackmailed, refusing to become the sacrifice that makes Victor stronger. She tells Kane, in the sharp language of someone who has lived too long in war, that a hostage story can be used to justify anything, and that if he is wrong, he will destroy Lily's life in the name of saving it. Kane hears that as cruelty. He hears it as Phyllis protecting her throne while Lily allegedly suffers. Their conflict becomes a moral courtroom without a judge. Outside, the world continues, but inside the train car the air thickens with the sense that something irreversible is approaching. Kane's desperation drives him to present a new angle, a new strategy, a new plea, something he believes will finally make Phyllis understand. He frames it not as surrender but as a strategic retreat. Give Victor what he wants temporarily, then take it back once Lily and the twins are safe. But Phyllis knows better than anyone how Victor operates. Temporary concessions become permanent losses. Victor will demand written agreements, public moves, board votes, transfers that cannot be undone without creating chaos that harms innocent people. Victor will bind Phyllis with legal chains and then smile as if it was her choice. Kane's few days to think have transformed him into someone willing to gamble with Phyllis's future, and Phyllis does not forgive gamblers who place other people's chips on the table. Yet Kane cannot back down, because to back down would mean acknowledging that he might not be able to save Lily, and that admission would shatter him. So he pushes harder. His voice rises. His logic becomes sharper but more ruthless. He begins to speak like a man who has accepted that someone must lose, and he has decided it will not be Lily.